Antonio Lucio Vivaldi, born in 1678 in Venice, Italy, died 1741 in Vienna, Austria. First grade. Antonio Lucio Vivaldi was born with red hair. Because he later became a priest, he was nicknamed the Red Priest. But you might not have known that he had red hair because so many people wore wigs. But why did people wear wigs back then? Well, there were 3 reasons. First, natural balding. Sometimes you lose your hair, and people wanted to avoid looking like they were losing their hair, and wigs were an easy fix. Reason 2, they were fashionable, trendy, easy to use. You could just wake up, pull back your hair, and put on a ready-made wig, and you were good to go. Sometimes they'd even put large objects like miniature boats in their hair for fancy balls and such. The third reason is due to a little pest called head lice. You see, there was no indoor plumbing, and it was difficult to treat water for diseases for large masses of people like we do nowadays. And so there was a lot of poor hygiene, and head lice unfortunately prevailed. Head lice are these little bugs that like to live in your hair and cause your scalp to itch, and they lay eggs, and it just continues to be such a problem. And we have this special chemical that we can put in our hair. We can comb through and get all the little nits, the eggs out. But back then, a surefire way of getting rid of head lice was to shave off your whole head. It was easier that way. So next time you look at a portrait of a person wearing a wig, you might wonder, are they doing it because they're balding? Are they doing it because it's fashionable and easy? Or are they doing it because they have a problem with head lice? Second grade. Venice, Italy, the birthplace of Vivaldi, and also the place of his employment for many years. Well, where is Italy in the world? Well, it looks like a boot kicking some islands, but where Venice is in relation to Italy is that it faces the Adriatic Sea, which joins the Mediterranean Sea. Now you might notice, what makes this city different from other cities? Yes, instead of streets and cars, it has waterways and boats. In fact, they call their boats gondolas, those long, skinny ones that you'll often see in cartoons. And if you've been to Las Vegas and to the hotel called the Venetian, they have it there as well. There's a guy with a striped shirt standing and pushing a stick in the water while singing to 2 lovers who are like, "Oh, this is so romantic." Now, wouldn't it be nice to wake up in the morning and think, I want to go play at Bob's house today, so you cannonball out of your window, whoa, and swim over there, and life is great. And you would think that'd be nice, but it might not be a good idea. You see, a lot of their sewer system in Vivaldi's time was in that water. At the time, it was very innovative and very new, and it was one of the cleanest cities in the world because they had this ingrained sewer system that would flush out about 2 times a day. with the natural tide of the water. Even today, little has changed. The city's main way of removing waste is still via the canals, with some places having newer piped systems in place. Tourists often notice the stench, while the Venetians, the people who live there, are used to it. Unfortunately, over a period of 100 years, so a century, the buildings of Venice sink into the water about 4 inches. Now that might not seem like a lot, but since Venice has been around for, about 15 centuries, that adds up to be about 5 feet or maybe more, depending on when the first heavy building, was placed on Venice soil. See how that doorway is partially submerged? Many things have been done to try to fortify Venice from sinking into the water. 3rd grade. Back then, it was really hard for a composer to get a good, steady income being a composer. He really only had 2 choices. He could maybe work for the church, like Johann Sebastian Bach worked for the Lutheran Church. Or he could work for some nobility or royalty, somebody wealthy, like Mozart did. There's pros and cons to each of those. For example, if you were to work for the Roman Catholic Church, which Vivaldi was a part of, he would become a priest. It would be steady income, steady employment, a good place to live, maybe a good workflow, but he wouldn't be allowed to marry. However, if he became employed by somebody who was wealthy, he could write dances for them, he could present gifts to his boss's friends, etc., but the pay is not guaranteed. For instance, maybe the Duke might say, I want this and this. Okay, Duke, says the composer, but I haven't been paid since the last commission. What? You're complaining, says the Duke? You're out of here. There was no HR department. You're kind of at the whim of the nobility you're working for. And if another composer comes along who is all the rage and people are all talking about, you would get the boot, and the new composer would come in. Vivaldi chose to go the church route. But although he was ordained a priest in 1703, within a year of being ordained, Antonio Vivaldi no longer wished to celebrate Mass because of physical complaints. He talked about a tightness of the chest, which pointed to angina pectoris or asthmatic bronchitis or maybe a nervous disorder. We don't know. But it is also possible that Vivaldi was simulating illness. There's a story that he sometimes left the altar in order to quickly jot down a musical idea. In any event, he had become a priest against his own will, perhaps because in his day training for the priesthood was often the only way for a poor family to obtain free schooling. Because he was excused from his priestly duties, he had more time to work on his compositions, and later formed one of the most famous groups in all of Venice. Fourth grade. Because Vivaldi was deemed as a priest safe, he was invited to teach girls music at an orphanage that needed a music teacher. The original orphanage is currently a hotel-restaurant complex called the Metropole, and in the bar of the hotel you can see the scaffolding. The scaffolding, you can see it in the bottom right corner of the slide, is a revolving door where orphan babies could be anonymously placed. Now in this image you can see girls sitting and performing on a tiered mezzanine. Some people say this was to help keep them sheltered from the corruption and decadence of the visiting public. And the girls sang from the upper galleries of the church hidden behind these patterned grills, which you can't quite see in this image. There would be many people who would flock to Vivaldi's church to hear these mysterious women, only seen in silhouette, but sounding like angels. For a time, the heads of the orphanage thought he wasn't needed, so they let Vivaldi go. But after a year, they brought him back because they realized how much he contributed to the school. The girls' choir and orchestra had gained notoriety. You can imagine that 300 years ago, all of this music that you're hearing now was actually played by these women. Sometimes they'd invite the best musicians in the city to come and be a guest performer at some of their exclusive concerts. The babies left at the hospital were taken care of. The boys learned a trade and left at the age of 16. While many of the girls supported the institution by sewing, embroidering, and doing some other important domestic work. Ultimately, those young women would get married or take the veil, so become nuns, and leave the hospital. Not all the girls, however, because when they were around 9 years old, they underwent a musical examination. The most musically talented were given an incredible opportunity to receive a rigorous musical education alongside their female peers. Fifth grade. While Vivaldi was well loved by all those he taught at the orphanage, did he love anyone? Is there a secret love of Vivaldi's? Well, he was a priest, so we know he wasn't allowed to marry, but still, was there somebody that caught his eye? In the video, you see two images. One painting, the one on the left, is called Before the Wedding. It looks like she doesn't want to go through with it. The other painting, on the right, is from a 1600 wedding of a queen. Did Vivaldi ever get married despite his connection with the Catholic Church? Well, luckily for you, you get to find out here in the 6th grade's portion of Vivaldi's biography. Was Vivaldi involved in any scandals? During his time in Mantua, Vivaldi became acquainted with an aspiring young singer named Anna Tessieri Giro, who would become his student, protege, and favorite prima donna. Anna, along with her older half-sister Paolina, became part of Vivaldi's entourage and regularly accompanied him on his many travels. Paolina also served as nurse to Vivaldi when his asthma, his breathing problems, acted up. He loved Anna's voice so much he wrote several operatic roles for her, including the one you've been listening to. But because of their closeness, there was speculation as to the nature of Vivaldi and Giro's relationship. Was it all an innocence? Well, Vivaldi adamantly denied any romantic relationship with Giro in a letter to his patron. He had been working on an opera with her, and the cardinal, his boss, said that they were both off the project and forbade them from working together. Apparently, he had heard rumors and thought that maybe their relationship would be deemed inappropriate. Vivaldi, however, he wrote that letter, where he denied it, saying that the cardinal's reaction gave an unfounded black mark on the girl's reputation, and how important it was, especially back in that day, because reputation for women was everything. Lots of books were written speculating on the nature of Vivaldi and Anna Giro's relationship. However, no evidence exists to indicate anything beyond friendship and professional collaboration. Vivaldi's legacy. Like many composers of the time, Vivaldi faced financial difficulties in his later years. His compositions were no longer held in such high esteem, not as they had once been in Venice. Changing musical tastes quickly made them outmoded. In response, Vivaldi chose to sell off sizable numbers of his manuscripts at paltry prices to finance his migration to Vienna. The reasons for his departure from Venice are unclear, but it seems that after the success of his meeting with Emperor Charles VI, he wished to take up the position of a composer in the imperial court. Shortly after his arrival in Vienna, however, Charles VI died, which left the composer without any royal protection or a steady source of income. Soon afterwards, Vivaldi became impoverished and died during the night, in July of 1741, at age 63. They say he had some kind of internal infection. But where is his grave today? We don't know. His grave was lost when Vienna's Technical University was built over the graveyard. In 1978, on the 300th anniversary of his birth, a plaque was installed at Vienna Tech to indicate Vivaldi's long-lost gravesite. Italian, Baroque musical composer, virtuoso violinist, teacher, Roman Catholic priest. He is regarded as one of the greatest Baroque composers, having written instrumental concertos for the violin and a variety of other musical instruments, as well as sacred choral works and more than 40 operas. His best-known work is a series of violin concertos known as the Four Seasons.